Scott is, as I called him on Twitter, he is the content king. He's been doing content and doing it well for a very long time, for decades. He's VP of Community at Microsoft, but that's just his day job. He's on TikTok, he's on YouTube, he has a thriving podcast with over 900 episodes, over 10 million downloads. He's been blogging and writing on different platforms. He's everywhere, and he's been doing so much. And what I love so much about Scott is that he's been doing it calmly, consistently, with a family, raising two boys, and he is just so good at bringing it all together and doing it for the long run. He doesn't just, start something and then quit after a couple of months when no one's paying attention. He sees it through, and he sees it through to success. So I'm really excited to dig into how he does it and all the questions that we have. Okay, so Scott, let's first talk about the day job, because a lot of people here, a lot of people in our community, they work full time. They don't do the content stream, the income stream thing on the side, or they don't do it full time. They do it on the side. And you are a VP of Microsoft, which sounds like a very important, very big job. Which came first for you? Was it doing the developer relations community kind of stuff that you do at Microsoft, or was it all the content creation that you do on the side? Which one was first?
I would say making content came first. I was trying to figure out, like, as I'm heading towards the last 5 years of my career before I retire, I was having a little bit of a midlife crisis and trying to think about, like, what is my identity? What am I? And people who say I'm a developer advocate, but the developer advocate didn't even exist as a concept
Yeah.
for the first 20 years of my career. So I'm a teacher, right? I'm a teacher, and everything that I've done, there's always been an element of, like, enthusiasm and excitement. I'm the guy who knocks on the door and it's like, "Have you heard the news about whatever new thing I've heard about?" You know what I mean? Like, uh, whether it be, talking about physical media, like we're seeing in the comments. Like, I could talk about that for an hour. Like, let's talk about the rise of physical media. Have you heard the news about physical media? Um, so going out and being so excited about something that I would just talk about it to strangers, to high school students. I taught at university. I taught at a community college. Um, then when the rise of the internet happened, and then when I, like, registered my first domain in the 90s, registered Hanselman.com, it just seemed like the obvious place to put stuff. It didn't seem obvious to me to put my content on MySpace. That was something that is someone else's place. So it's like, I'm out here being excited. I'm talking to strangers. I'm sharing content. Oh, now there's a place to share content online. Oh, you have to register, like, your own address rather than giving it to, like, CompuServe or Usenet or one of the forums. So I made my own space and have been doing that for the last 25 plus years. It just
Mm-hmm.
seemed obvious to do that. And then the job is the job, but the money that is made is either walking around money, pocket money, or is money I can donate, to charity. But yeah, it was very much just being an enthusiast online came far before and way before the job.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Do they ever butt heads for you when you're thinking about your role as a community person, head of all of the developers is kind of how I think about your role at Microsoft, and the work that you do there versus the content you create on TikTok and on your personal YouTube channel. Do those worlds ever collide in a bad way? Do they ever butt heads?
That's a very good question. Yes, they do. And they do for myself, they do for the team. And I think that that's a really, really important thing for people to watch out for. That your this is my opinion. Everything we're talking about here is my opinion. So if you disagree, it's okay. But what matters more, right? Your personal brand or the regular paycheck?
Mm.
Right. So I went to work at Microsoft many, many, many years ago, not just because I wanted to open source everything and I liked the company, but I needed insulin. So for me, in capitalism at this point in America, I need healthcare. And the healthcare that I can get at the big giant corporate job that I work is more important to me. I could potentially do my wife's insurance, but the original decision 15 years ago when I went to work at Microsoft was healthcare. Therefore, if there's ever a competition between my job and my my content, then the job will win. Now, that's not to say that I won't. I'm honest and clear about what I will talk about at my job, But an example would be my job is talking about C# and .NET, and my job is talking about the Azure cloud. It would be weird for me to go and do a 10-part educational series on Azure, put it on my blog, call it Hansel Cloud, and charge people $100 for it. Right? That
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
that doesn't fit into the Venn diagram of stuff. I don't take money for presentations. Like if I
Mm,
give talks, that's my job to go and give talks. Now, if I were to take money for a presentation, it wouldn't be about technology and Microsoft. I would take
mhm,
a vacation day. I would tell my boss, maybe it's about diabetes or about productivity. I would completely clear my schedule so that there's a bright, bright line between my day job and my side content. The podcast is mine. It is not affected by Microsoft. The YouTube is mine. It is not affected by Microsoft. The TikTok is just me goofing around, right?
mhm,
So if there's any kind of a question, I have that conversation with my boss. I think where things get squishy is that when someone's expertise at work, which is developed at work, developed on work computers, on work time, on work resources, and then you go and do it on your YouTube and you start making it all about you. So I encourage my team to keep their side hustle and their work stuff separate.
mm,
And it's a
mhm.
long answer, but I want to be real
That's
clear
good
about that.
advice. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah,
that's good advice.
yeah.
That's good
Because
for
I've
us.
seen other people online do things where they're like taking money for workshops and stuff, and it's like that's your job. You can't
Mm,
double dip. So double dipping is my recommendation to you is absolutely not something you should do. It is not ethical, and it is a career limiting move.
mm, mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
One of the big questions that we got in the AMAs, because people who RSVP'd were able to submit their questions to you, one of the big ones was around ideation and where do your ideas come from? And it's interesting because we just talked about not double dipping and making sure that there's kind of a clean line between your work and your content creation. How do you manage that when I assume a lot of your ideas probably come from the work that you do? How do you kind of come up with things that are unique enough that they feel
Hmm.
safe to create, if a lot of the technology you're exposed to is your day job?
That is interesting. So I have never had that problem, and I've had
Oh.
people ask that question a lot.
Hmm.
And like I only know how to be me. I only know how I'm wired. But it would be interesting for us to take a moment and explore this, right? Like I have hobbies that are diverse and not related to my job, although they do tend to be a little computer focused. Like you can see my 3D printer
Mm-hmm.
filament over here.
Yep.
And then this thing right here that I'm pointing at is a PDP-11 mini computer. It's a
Mm.
replica of a computer from the 1970s. So I built that from a kit and I learned all about, what 1970s Unix looks like. That is not my job. I did that on a weekend and then did some TikToks on it, did some content on it. So I have found that the stuff that I do in my spare time as my fun life background stuff is, content appropriate. But if my life was 99% my job and I had no hobbies or stuff, I just like
Mm.
collapsed in a heap and watched Netflix, then I wouldn't really have that. So I think actually now that I'm working this, like my therapist here, what it is I'm finding enough that I can shut down after work. I think if my job consumed me, then I would not be able to do these side things.
Mhm.
So I know that there's a privilege there in that I can disconnect. I don't work 60-hour weeks often.
Mm.
If I know that there are a lot of people out there that are really hustling and they're working these 60-hour weeks, and the only thing you can do at the end of that is to just veg. Where do you get your energy from? Is it from the vegging? Is it from working out? Maybe you're going to do workout content. But for me, putting together models, 3D printing, assembling things from kits, that's where I get my energy back. And then that lends itself easily to content.
Mm. When an idea comes to you from one of your hobbies, one of the many things that you're into, that you're messing around with, how do you know it's a good one? What makes an idea a good enough idea worth creating content around? How do you kind of vet them?
I guess there's a certain amount of ignorance on my part, and ignorance is bliss, in that when you are so excited about stuff that you would like? I always use the analogy of knocking on someone's door and saying, "Have you heard the news?" John, have you heard the news about the PDP-11 1976 mini computer? You don't care, but sometimes it doesn't matter. It matters that I'm excited.
Mm.
How many times have you found yourself knee deep in a TikTok about a bizarre topic or a YouTube that you don't care about? And then you're like, wow, this guy just made me watch an 11-minute talk on the Roman Empire. You're not interested in that, but the person was so jazzed that they'll watch it. So I'll end up watching content, not for the content, but for the enthusiasm about the person.
Mm.
I want their energy and their excitement, and I am excited for them that they are excited about something.
Mm.
So a lot of people might watch my content with no intent of 3D printing a Mandalorian helmet or making a mini computer or doing anything like that. But they're like, wow, this guy's really excited about that. I love that for him. So I don't
Yeah.
keep myself from doing so. I don't like, oh, I don't know if people are going to like old computer content. I
Mm-hmm.
don't care. Apathy is the greatest privilege. To
Mm.
choose to not care. Now that would be interesting because if I absolutely needed to make the side money to pay the rent, that's where things get really challenging, because then you start thinking about what does the audience want, and then you're changing who you are, right? Like I don't think Hank Green, as an example, is sitting around thinking about what the people want. He's probably just following his bliss. But was he always doing that? He was probably grinding out what he thought the people wanted. I just had a
Mm.
viral video, two of them in a row,
Mm.
on my TikTok.
Mm.
They're all 3D printing. I
I saw
think it's not a
those.
3D printing. It's not a 3D printing TikTok, and I haven't done a TikTok since. It's been like a week, so I'm like, I don't want to turn this into a 3D printing TikTok. But if I did, though, I would literally be doing what you're saying. I would go and say the people have asked. The people have spoken. It's a 3D printing TikTok now,
Mm.
right? So I
Yeah.
have to think about those things.
That's really interesting because it really speaks to your motivation behind the content because you're in a position where you do content mostly because you love it, you love teaching, you love giving back. It's not your bread and butter. You have a day job, you have something holding you down that's doing well for you. And a lot of this money is, as you put it, is kind of extra money. It's walking around money, it's donation money, it's play money. But if you were pursuing it as, I need to turn this content into my future day job, I need to make it into something, you'd probably approach it a little bit differently. So how do you imagine, if Microsoft, if the Microsoft ride was over tomorrow and you had
Hmm.
to really take this content thing, you got to take it, to a whole new level and you need to start paying the bills. What are some changes that you might make?
I would probably imagine a pie chart of what they want and what I want.
Mm.
I try to do the same thing for people at my work. Like there's 2 or 3 days a week. If you imagine your 5-day week being chopped up, I'll say 2 to 3 days a week. These are the corporate things that need to be done. And then a day a week would be like, here's the things, Hanselman, your boss wants you to do. And then Friday is like, feed your spirit,
Mm.
do what you want to do. So people who work for me are doing like their big corporate chunk of stuff, the thing that they're excited about, and the little niche thing that I asked them to do. So if given that people know me as an example for .NET, for 3D printing, for gadgetry, I could go and be kind of a low key MKBHD type and review consumer electronics and talk about gadgets and productivity and stuff like that. It would be retreading topics that I am less interested in. I would
Mm.
probably do that 70-75% of the time. And then I would slowly try to nudge the community towards the things that I'm excited about
Mm.
with like, have you heard
Interesting.
the news topics?
Yeah.
Like if I started to explain, like I'm doing filament-based printing. This is called additive manufacturing. But there's a new kind of 3D printing called resin printing.
Mm.
I'd probably start exploring resin printing, and then maybe I'd move the community and the audience towards that because they hadn't heard of it yet. But I couldn't turn the website, turn the whole brand, in quotes, because I don't believe in the brand, turn the whole brand into resin printing. But I would say, oh, well, he's branching out a little bit.
Mhm, mhm.
You're
I
asking wonderful questions, by the way. You're
Thanks.
really, I don't know if you can tell, but like the gears are really moving.
Next, I want to talk about expectations because this is something that came up in the questions that people submitted as well around, what happens when you work really hard and the content bombs and you're kind of dealing with the emotions and the frustrations of content not performing the way that you want to. So I wanted to ask, has there been a piece of content for you that you had a really good feeling about, you thought it was gonna really connect with people, you were pumped to put it out there, and then it flopped and didn't do well. Has that happened to you?
Yeah. So the thing that I am consistently disappointed in is 300 to 400 level, highly technical, exquisitely edited and researched content
Mhm.
always gets 1,000 views.
Mm.
And a random declarative clickbait statement about, like filmed in the Walmart parking lot goes viral. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I 3D printed a pair of like shoes that kind of look like Crocs.
Yeah, I saw those. They're
And
beautiful.
that video went like, good bananas. It's got like 2 million views.
Wow.
But it's probably because I said Crocs suck and they're a garbage shoe and people just lost their minds. You know what I mean? So it's like that I understand why like the Joe Rogans of the world exist because they
Mhm.
just attach their mouth directly to the microphone. And that is disappointing.
Mm.
It's a bummer when I'll go and do a 300 level highly technical C sharp, how to do unit testing in C sharp with Docker and Playwright, blah, 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 and it gets more and more and more niche.
Mhm.
And people appreciate me for that because they're like, man, there's nobody on the planet who could talk about that like Hanselman. But the fact are, developers that use .NET, that use Docker, that use testing, there's like the 9 people that care saw that video and they were like, good job. But like, here's how to start 3D printing.
Mhm.
Million. So that's the problem with populism, right?
Yeah.
If you try to hit the entire populace, then you're not going to be in your space, in your niche, and it's a problem.
What is the lesson there? When that happens, does that mean you just don't do intermediate 300, 400 level content? Does that mean you
Hmm.
do it once a month to feed your spirit? Like, what do you
Yeah,
typically
exactly.
think
So
on
back to that analogy of splitting up your week, I
that?
would
Right.
say like Fridays is your release,
Mm,
Now I'm not saying you go full Mr. Beast and just make a bunch of crap for the first 3 days of the week, but yes, there's a pyramid of interest. 100 level content, basic base content is going to have a wider range of stuff.
mhm,
Now, that said, there are people that I really admire, like Ben Eater, Beneater,
mhm.
has very highly technical content, unapologetically hardcore. Let's look at how electrons move around a circuit board type content.
Wow.
And he just does it. And he found his niche
Mm,
and he got a global audience of millions, but it took a while for him to
yeah.
build. So if
Yeah.
I were trying to pay the rent, I would come up with this pyramid, like the food pyramid.
Mhm,
You
mhm,
need the basic kind of like complex carbohydrates at the bottom.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Got you. Got you.
Leandro in the chat has an excellent point saying that the algorithms favor the engagement, so it drives people to shallow content. I
Mhm.
love that term, shallow content.
Yeah.
Finding a balance between shallow and deep, and using the shallow content though to encourage your viewers to delve deeper.
I like that. I like that. And then tell me about content that went better than expected. Has there been a piece of content? I guess you mentioned the Crocs 3D printing TikTok videos that you were not expecting at all to connect, and they did.
Yeah. Parenting stuff is
Hmm.
also very populous because everyone can relate to that kind of
True.
stuff. They have a
True.
kid in their life, or they're an aunt or an uncle or whatever. Also people really like to say that never happened. I've discovered an entire section of the internet that is like irony Twitter or irony where all they do is they just say things that never happened for 200, Alex. So like
Mm,
my 16-year-old was getting bummed out by social media. He was losing time. He was looking at his screen time, and it was like spending 5-6 hours on TikTok. And he's like, I'm
mm-hmm,
losing time. So he's like, I needed to stop doing that. And we had put in screen time, and
mm-hmm,
he had even like given his screen time code to a buddy of his so that he had to text the buddy in order to get
mm.
the code. Like he was trying to put systems in place,
Wow, that's cool.
but he didn't want me to lock the phone down because he's freaking almost 17 years old.
Yeah.
but he recognized this about himself. So he asked me to buy him a flip phone. So I
Oh.
bought a $45 flip phone, and we went and we converted his eSIM to a physical SIM. And then he wanted maps, so we found a flip phone with Google Maps. And see, even now, I'm sure you can see there's multiple pieces of content there. Like, it's not just little kid gets flip phone. It's, did you know that there's flip phones that have Google Maps? People don't
I
realize that.
didn't know that. Yeah.
Did you know flip phones have internet? It's just really slow. Did you know that T9, where you like type on the 9 characters, it has predictive text now? That's a video.
Oh.
Voice recognition on a flip phone is a thing now.
Hmm.
The idea that eSIMs exist. Most people don't even think about their SIM cards in the US. They do
No.
overseas, but like
Yeah.
eSIMs versus physical SIMs, having to convert the content map, boom, it just gets created. But what was the content that people engaged with? They're like, he doesn't have a kid. That doesn't exist. No kid would ever give up social media. He'd be a social pariah. This guy just made content based on a flip phone because he's old. Like, it was crazy. Like 50% of the comments are just haters.
Yeah.
I just don't get it. Like, why would you scroll? Like, that was your takeaway?
Yeah. That's
You've met
unfortunate.
my kids.
Yeah.
That's totally a thing that they would do, and he had just done it, and
It
I
is. Yeah.
recorded the video was like, oh wow, and I recorded the video, and that's gone nuts, and that video made me like $1,000.
Hmm. Wow. That's
It's
great.
insane. But now, should I go and do parenting video about like retro
Right.
tech? Should I pivot the entire thing towards forcing my kids to use cassette players?
Those are the big
Yeah, see,
questions.
I love it. Someone in the chat, Ishai says, those comments never happened. He never even made the video. See? And now I'm all pissed off, and I'm going to make a video about that.
And then you make another $1,000. This is great. This is amazing.
Oh, I wanted to call something out, if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
please.
Someone earlier in the chat pulled out a comment that I had said. They said, "What do you mean I don't believe in the brand?"
Ooh, let's dig into that. Yeah, what does that mean?
If you don't mind, I just
Please.
apologize because I know you have a whole content
No,
plan for this
do it.
conversation. But like, I am, and I'm being vulnerable here. We have some friends on the chat, and I know this will end up being put on the internet and stuff like that. But I am bummed a little bit that you can get 20,000 Twitter followers by going online and asking open-ended questions about JavaScript. Like, that just makes me sad. You know, like, you could just start a Twitter today. And when I say a Twitter, I mean that like generic social media site, Kleenex. You can go and start a Twitter. You put a moderately attractive AI generated face in it, and you start going, should I start my project with Reacts or Redux? And then 5 weeks later, you got 20,000 followers, and then you turn that into a job as a developer advocate. That, and people are kind of agreeing there. So those kind of like clickbaity, open-ended questions, people today think that is building their personal brand. And for me, and I recognize that I have privilege and I'm an old guy, but like, showing up consistently and kindly in spaces as a helpful voice is how you should build a personal brand, not just being that open-ended JavaScript question guy or gal. And finding a balance between early in career, 100 level base of the pyramid, beginner, non-gatekeepy stuff, and then occasionally digging into deep dives and stuff. I'm interested in folks in the chat. People are going, ugh, yes, fair. Yeah, so like they're, and then also, Cassidy calls out in the chat that if you say something wrong, people are actually saying wrong stuff, so engagement bait. I am sad, as someone who's been a person on the internet for 30 years, since the internet was invented, that we are kind of in this race towards the bottom. Like, we have refined the formula for engagement so algorithmically that the algorithm has changed people's personalities. Have you heard streamer voice? Have you watched any streamers and how they talk now?
No, I haven't noticed.
Okay, so I'm playing Elden Ring right now, and I'm killing it on Elden Ring, by the way. It's the greatest game in the history of video games. It's just like, it's so good. I could do a whole hour on Elden Ring. And I watch these very, very well-meaning young 25-year-old streamers that have full-time jobs as streamers, and they go, This is the way you get the greatest weapon in Elden Ring. Let's show you how. And it's just like
Mhm.
it's just NPC kind of behavior. The tone, the timbre. It's all different guys and gals, but it's the exact same thing. And the way that so we've algorithmically created these people and turned them into not themselves.
Mm.
So I am finding myself finding people who are being themselves online.
Mhm.
The protect them at all costs people. I want to see people who are themselves humans, not
Mhm.
NPCs, not non-player characters. I want people to be themselves. I love following the full human. I said this
Yeah.
years ago online. Follow the full human. Last week, someone said, "Stick to software, Hanselman," right? Because I made something vaguely political.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, pardon me for not being a topic, right? I am a person. So following the
Yeah.
full human, that's why I don't like personal branding. Personal branding means you're thinking too hard about who you are presenting as opposed
Mhm.
to being yourself.
I want to dig into bringing your full self to the internet, I guess, or to content creation. Because, and we're not going to get into politics or who we're rooting for. I know it's
Right, right.
a topic and all that, but I did see some political stuff on your feed. I've
Yeah, yeah.
tweeted stuff on my feed as well, which is very new for me. I don't usually do that, but I did this time. And how do you decide when to bring in the world into your content? When do you decide, I'm strictly tech, I'm strictly, doing my IT thing and my hobby thing versus, I really care about what's going on in this part of the world. Let me bring that in. How do you kind of decide when to bring it in? And is it like safe to do that? Are you taking a risk to your
Yeah, yeah.
sponsors to your job even? Like, are you like, how do you manage bringing your whole self?
That's a great question. Let's rather than using politics, which is a tough spot, let's talk about it in the context of AI.
Mm,
So I work at Microsoft in my day job, and it is arguably in some fashion my job to sell you AI
mhm.
because Microsoft woke up and said AI is the next thing, and they're
Yep.
all running in that direction.
Yep.
So I don't want to just talk about AI, and because then that would mean I am not being myself, right? I am enthusiastic about AI. I am cautiously optimistic about AI, but people would go, "Oh, Hanselman's another AI shill,"
Mhm.
if I just ran in that direction. So I have to walk this razor's edge between how do I feel about AI? How do I present it in a way that shows my full self, but doesn't go 100% against the company,
Mhm.
lest I get fired? Even though I have a certain amount of privilege where I could arguably get fired. And this is where you don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good, where like people will be like, how do you even work for Microsoft at all? You should just quit that evil company. Well, it's like, no, I don't think that we're evil. I think we're a collection of people who have done some bad things, but as a general rule, we're trying to do good things, just like America, right? We don't just cancel the entire company or cancel the entire country.
Mhm.
So I am infusing within the conversations that I have and talk about AI, responsibility, ethics, bias. I'm having like real talk conversations about AI while also pointing out how it is useful. And there is privilege in that, level privilege by having a fancy title. I think that someone of a lower level who's less secure in their job might feel less comfortable to be able to kind of do that kind of stuff. They might feel that they have to talk about the company line. But the privilege that I have by being a person who's been around on the internet long enough is that I can be honest with people and say, here's some really problematic stuff that AI does, and I don't think it should do, and I'm going to talk about that. So I'm not just out there shilling the next, you should use Copilot, right?
Mhm.
Finding that balance is the trick.
Mhm. 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 Yeah.
Yeah, I love this comment by Nika who says, "In the age of AI, being genuine and not apologizing for it is powerful." That is the
The
trick.
not
That is the trick.
apologizing part
I love that.
particularly.
I love
Yeah.
that. I'm not going to apologize for inclusion,
Yeah.
right? I don't
Amen.
think inclusion is a political thing.
Yeah. Completely agree. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
There are things to keep to yourself, right?
right.
You know, and I do manage my brand in the sense of like I talk about my kids, but no one knows their names, as an example, because that's not a thing. That's a decision that the children should make. And there aren't a lot of pictures of the kids. They're only like, from the side or from the back, like in shadow, because it's just not necessary. So
Yeah,
you
you
can,
really take their privacy seriously. I respect that. I
yeah,
think that's
yeah.
great.
Thank you for noticing.
Yeah.
So you have to think about what's called the parasocial relationship. You may have had this happen to you because you're a visible person on the internet. You recently had a baby. You're very open about stuff. Have you ever bumped into anyone like, at Safeway and they're like, "Oh my God, it's Saran from the internet." And then
I
like, you're,
yeah.
you're not my buddy though.
Yeah.
You're not my, you're not my friend. We don't have a social relationship. We have a parasocial relationship.
Parasocial relationship. Yeah.
Are you
Yeah.
familiar with that term?
Yes. Yes, I
Yeah,
am.
I think it's a really fascinating one because it always catches me off guard. I bumped into somebody at a food cart recently, and they wanted to introduce me to their kid, and they were asking me how my kids were doing, and it was a little awkward because you could tell they didn't know my kids' names, so they were trying to connect with me like we were friends, but we're
Yeah.
not friends yet. We are not even colleagues.
Right.
So
Right.
there's a power dynamic in that, and that can be uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, okay, I want to get back to the content growth process, because one of the things that I think a lot of people get frustrated by, I know I get frustrated by it. This came up in the AMA in the submitted questions as well, is how long do you work on a particular platform, on a particular stream, before you call it quits and decide it's not working? How long do you kind
Mm.
of give something a chance to work before you realize maybe it's not really worth it? Maybe it's not really the right strategy. So when you're going into, like, I think TikTok was probably the newest channel for you. I think it was.
Well, so I love that you brought this up because
Yeah.
remember how I refuse to call X anything other than Twitter.
Yes.
And now we blinked and we went from having one Twitter to having like 4 or 5.
Mm.
So I'm looking at my taskbar right now. I've got Mastodon,
Yep.
Threads, Blue
Blue
Sky.
Sky. Yep.
There's also one called like Nowhere that just came out.
Oh.
There's No Place.
Okay.
There's Spill. So like there's this long tail of
Mm.
other Twitters,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and people are trying to get me to pick one.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, like
Yeah.
Twitter is a dumpster fire,
Yeah.
but it's also like Reddit. It's like a hub.
Yeah.
Now I have curated my Twitter so algorithmically I get positivity.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I've curated my algorithm at TikTok. So I don't see a lot of the negativity because I've consciously
Same.
I've blocked words, muted words, blocked people. But picking, I think a flaw that I have is not wanting to pick one.
Mm-hmm.
So then I pick them all. And that can be challenging
Yeah.
because then you end up like, not enough butter on too much bread.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's a good.
I start at Mastodon and then I copy paste to Twitter, to Threads, and to Blue Sky. And I want the others to be the next big thing. The
Yeah.
closest one so far is Threads,
Mm.
but it is plateaued
Mm.
in its growth very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm. 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 So when you're thinking about pushing your content um, to a particular platform, how long do you give it before you're like, this isn't working? Like, or how long do you think is reasonable for us to expect results?
I, as a person who is old, I tend to err on the side of longer
Mm.
than shorter.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked to you before about how the world is littered with one season podcasts of 7 episodes.
Yep.
That's just so classic. Like 95% of podcasts have a couple of episodes and people just leave.
Mm-hmm.
So life is a marathon. These kind of things are a marathon. I tend to wait a year at plateaued growth before I would bail.
Mm-hmm.
But like, for example, I went to Mastodon. Okay, so just using the numbers as an example, I have 300,000+ followers on Twitter
Mm-hmm.
over 14 years,
Right.
and I've got 40,000 on Mastodon.
Mm-hmm.
Those 40,000 though happened within the first 6 months when we
Right.
were all running over to Mastodon.
Right. Right.
I have been plateaued at Mastodon for 2 years, 3
Mm-hmm.
years. So that's an order of magnitude, right? 300,000, 30,000, and then if you go to Blue Sky, it's like 3,000. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
110, 1. It's just
Mm-hmm.
10x smaller. And
Right. Right.
but at the same time, my growth is plateaued on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
So one could argue maybe either I don't have a growth strategy, or that everyone who is interested in what I have to say has found me, and that's it. And there's no new
Right.
people.
Right. Right.
But then I got on TikTok and was able to put together 200,000 followers within 6 months.
Wow.
So I think it really showcases, though, that how fundamentally different those spaces are.
Mm-hmm.
Like looking at like my friend Lovey is huge on Instagram. So
Mm-hmm.
that means that her audience is on Instagram. Like the people who
Mm-hmm.
really care about her are on. She started on Twitter, but Instagram is where she's just killing it.
Mm-hmm.
All the meta properties. Um, and if you like, I see people in the chat talking about No Place, which is like the kids' MySpace, Threads being corporate-y. Like the vibes are starting to develop, and people are starting to get a sense of like who goes on Threads.
Mm-hmm.
Like I talk to my kids. My kids are not on Threads.
Yeah.
No, like that's just not a thing. They're still on Instagram, and there's also a move towards shit posting on TikTok,
Mm-hmm.
turning TikTok into the new Instagram by posting photographs and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
watching these things go around, I'm just doing all of them, but my bread and butter are kind of like the big three or four. But I
Mm-hmm.
don't think I'm going to abandon one. And I
Mm-hmm.
always, I
Mm-hmm.
always, I always grab my name, right? So like I'm not going to be
Of
on No
course.
Place,
Yeah.
but I have my name just in case.
Right. Right.
And I
Smart.
probably won't be on Spill either because it's probably not appropriate for me to be on Spill.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Gotcha. I have to look these things up. I haven't heard of.
Oh, you never heard of these things?
No, I never heard of these things.
Oh my
I
goodness.
gotta do some research. Tell me
Oh, and
about.
then also Air Chat's another new
I
one.
have
That's
heard. Oh yeah, what happened with that? I
Well, so
heard about it,
AirChat
but
was
is it
like an
still
attempt at being asynchronous Clubhouse.
right?
So AirChat is Twitter, except it's all voice memos.
Right.
And I just have no interest in listening to other people's voice. I don't listen to the voice memos people send me now.
Yeah, I
Why
don't
would I
like
go to a social
voice
media site that's nothing but voice memos?
I don't like voice memos. They annoy me so much. Okay, let's talk about metrics. Metrics are interesting because there are so many. There's views, there's likes, there's followers. It feels like followers, especially with the For You feeds being so popular, means less than it used to mean 5, 10 years ago. And it feels like there are all these, there's open rates, there's click-through rates if we're talking about newsletters. What metrics do you care about?
That's a great one. I say the same thing to my team. I am a huge fan of engagement over views.
Mm,
So I would much rather have a 10,000 view video with 1,000 comments
hmm
than a million view video with 10 comments.
Interesting. Okay.
Right. I also believe that Twitter views are garbage. Like Twitter, since it has turned into what it is, their numbers are not to be trusted. As something scrolls by, it is counted as a view. If you
Mm,
click on a video and then scroll away, it is counted as a view, and the number of like viewers is
hmm
sticky. So I'll see threads or not threads, live streams on Twitter that have 2,000 viewers.
hmm
If they don't, it's obviously a lie because there's no one commenting, right? There's a passivity to it.
mm,
Um, YouTube, what does a view mean? People love to say we did 40,000 views, but what they're really counting is the number of total people that went by.
hmm
Like
hmm
if you had a car accident and you're parked on the side of the road and people drove by, are you going to count the rubberneckers that look, oh, that's some kind of car accident? Is that a
mm,
view? Oh, 40,000 people viewed? No, they didn't. They drove by you. Come
yeah.
on.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
viewers are the people who get out of their cars and help.
Yeah. Hmm Yeah. 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 I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, impressions. Asia points out impressions. It's like ads.
Hmm
Impressions matter less to me. Engagement. And the way that you can prove this is you'll find someone like tweet a deal and get like 1 million impressions,
hmm
but the click-throughs will be like 10.
hmm hmm
Getting people to take action is power. Getting
hmm
people to watch you, that's easy. Anybody can do that.
hmm Absolutely.
Yeah, great analogy. People who looked through the window of the store versus walked in versus who actually bought something. I love that analogy.
That's a
Good
really
stuff.
good one.
That's a
That's
good
a really good
analogy.
one. I think that was Aisha.
Yeah.
Aisha. That was a really good one. I like that one.
You should.
Um, so tell me more about how you think about productivity. And this is something that we're going to dig deeper into in the workshop next Tuesday. When we dig into productivity and task management and email management and calendar management and all these other things. But I wanted to kind of touch on that today because one of the big questions that we got over and over again from many people, I think this is the most popular question, was literally how do you do it? How do you balance it all when it comes to you? You have a beautiful wife that you share a life with. You have two wonderful kids. You have a day job. You have all this content that you're making across different platforms. How do you kind of keep all those plates spinning? How do you manage that just from a purely time and productivity point of view?
I try to avoid losing time. People, I use the analogy of being asleep or waking up. Now, that's not the woke analogy because it's the same word, but bear with me. People are asleep usually because they're either lulled into sleep by their boring lives or their crappy jobs or horrible bosses, or just like the kind of like inevitability of like the day. So, when you're driving or you're on the train and you kind of go, and then you've gone 2 stops or you've gone 3 blocks in your car. That's you've lost time. It's very scary. You can be driving your car and you're driving and you're mostly safe, but you micro sleeped or you just lost time.
Mm,
And they go, crap, I just fall asleep. I'm going to re-steel myself and I won't let that happen again. And then
mm-hmm,
3 months goes by and then you do it again. That happens at work. That happens in your life where you're just like, oh, is it Wednesday? What did I even do yesterday? And then it's Thursday and then it's Friday and then you recharge over the weekend and you do nighttime revenge procrastination. You stay up all night to try to get your time back and then you do it again.
mm-hmm,
I try to wake up 3 or 4 times a week, like
mm-hmm,
trying to wake up from a dream. That idea that you're in a dream, and if you have to ask, if you can go to bed saying, "All right, if I find myself dreaming, I'm going to ask myself if I'm in a dream to try to take control of the dream."
mm-hmm,
Wake up in your life. Set a meeting with yourself today at 4 o'clock. That's like, what am I even doing here? Because what happens is we just play Tetris with our calendars, fill it up with stuff we have to do without any actual sense of why we're doing it. We
mm-hmm,
don't ever have any meetings with ourselves where we're forced to sit and think about what we're doing. So I do Monday vision, what is my vision for the week, and Friday reflection.
mm-hmm,
What did I do this week? What can I forgive myself for things that happened this week? Can I give myself some grace for this week? And can I get myself awake
mm-hmm,
so that I can be present in the moment? It's a very intentional and deliberate way of doing things. And then if I'm going to binge on a show, I do it consciously and I try to do it in a way that involves some kind of feasible multitasking.
mm-hmm,
So maybe I'll be walking on a treadmill while watching a show, or I recently binged on the Jake Gyllenhaal show on Apple TV because I had an international flight. But I'm not going to take like a Wednesday night and rather than hanging out with my kids, watch this show. So I will prioritize the things with a very conscious thing. Are we going to burn 8 hours on this show? Are we cool with that? What's the opportunity cost of losing that time?
mm-hmm,
So yeah, today is a good day. I love that someone said that hit close to home. You can lose entire weeks. Like
mm-hmm.
I talk about how I've been a software engineer in software for 32 years.
Wow.
So I can say, hey, I've got 30 years experience, but maybe 7 of it I was asleep.
Mm,
I got to be honest with myself. I got to tell myself realistically, where did I lose time? Those are years I didn't learn. They're years where it was just like, time to make the donuts. And you get up and you make the donuts and you go back to bed. Yeah.
mm-hmm,
Asia's saying she lost years as well.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Don't
That's
lose
how I think
years.
about
Yeah.
productivity. Lots of people talk about productivity and like, oh, the 7 habits of highly effective people, and look at the quadrants and have a better calendar and use more coloring. But that's all important. But step one is, what am I even doing? You got
Mm,
to wake up. You got to wake up.
yeah. I like that. Watch how long you're asleep for. Because sometimes naps are nice.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about
Every once
asleep.
in a
This is
while.
metaphorically
Yeah, I know
asleep.
what you mean. I know what you mean.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Nice, nice. Let's talk about equipment. This is something else that also came up in the questions, because you are a big gadget guy. You've got a lot of stuff, right? You got your 3D printer, you got the LED lights. I feel like you have a lot of like equipment, and I'm wondering what your take is on the right equipment, if there is such a thing as the right equipment for people
Yeah.
just getting started. And this more pertains to like podcasting and video production, but I'm wondering what your opinions are on equipment and what people should buy or how much it should cost to get started if they want to take this content management or content strategy seriously.
Yeah. Um, I want to answer that, but I want to take just a very brief moment because
Yeah.
three different people in the chat brought something up because they felt like being introverted, being autistic, health issues, takes time away from them. And I
Mm,
want to acknowledge that,
it's
and
a
I want
great
to
point.
call out that that
Please.
is a thing that is
Yeah.
challenging.
Yeah.
I am, by coincidence, well, I am not autistic. I don't think I am. I am a type 1 diabetic.
Mm,
So I have all this equipment that's plugged into me. There's an insulin pump right here, and I've got a sensor over here. So I've got a thing. The analogy I give is like your task manager has like 20, 30%, and it's like system. It's like, what is system even doing? Like, what is that process? Like, why is it using 30% of my CPU? I need that time to work on stuff. So I want to acknowledge that, like, while it might feel like there is a time, like you have to recharge, everyone's got a thing you can't see.
mhm,
Most people have a thing that you can't see. So you have to figure out how to recharge that battery. I had a really bad blood sugar the last couple of days, and it's just one of those
mhm,
things, you know what I mean? So I
mhm,
was being very intentional about what was going to recharge me. Was it going to be sunshine? Was it going to be
mhm,
a meal? Was it going to be snuggling with my wife? Like, what was the thing that was going to get me out of that funk? So
mhm,
I just want to call out that I hear the people who are saying that they have that feeling and that it sucks.
mhm.
Okay, equipment. Now, this room looks like $1,000,000. This room is a lie. Okay, let's talk about this room. Okay, so Alexa, turn off The Office. Okay, this is a spare bedroom. It's got a TV, which is cool. It's got a $50 LED light, but these shelves are from IKEA.
Mm,
This this couch here is got a slip cover. This is a nice microphone, but I could put it over here. You can hear now you can hear the room, you can hear the walls,
mhm,
you can hear the thing. So by simply thinking intentionally about the lighting, having a LED ring light, Alexa, turn on The Office, and putting up $50 worth of LEDs, the room looks like $1,000,000.
mhm,
It's probably, not counting this big TV on a stand, it's probably a $350 room.
mm,
But I painted the walls because I needed it to look separate from the rest of the house.
mhm,
I needed it to be psychically, mentally, emotionally separate. There's no room in the house that is this color.
mm,
These are like $50 lights. I got them at LIFX. They're even refurbed, and it's just an LED strip.
mhm, mhm.
And the shelves are from IKEA. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
the
yeah.
room's messy as hell. Like, to be clear, there's a bunch of crap on the floor over here. So it's the intentionality of the space for myself as a creator, but also I just don't want people to feel like their room needs to look like $1,000,000. It just needs to be what you need it to be.
Mhm, mhm,
Okay.
mhm.
Now, the microphone. This is a Shure SHURE microphone, and you can hear that it's kind of warm and it's very radio voice. But I'm also modulating the way that I'm talking in order to get that. Now, if I move a foot away and change the tone of my voice, you start to hear the airiness. And if I get over here, I'm assuming you can hear the room. You can hear the sound of the room,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Now, I've got a $29 headphones right here that we could potentially plug in and see what that sounds like. And it probably is a little bit tinny and quiet. It's not
Mhm.
really awesome. But mic position matters so much as I fade away, as I bring it down here, as I pull it over to the side. Thinking about that kind of stuff really, really, really matters. And a lot of people don't think about that. They just buy a mic and then they plug it in. And then tragically, they put it over here.
Mhm.
You've got to eat the mic. I used to be one of these mic people where I had all the mixer equipment and stuff like that. But now this microphone has a nice long, it's called an XLR cable, and it goes into an Elgato Wave XLR. I don't have a fancy mixer. I don't have a whole fancy thing. It's just this wire into a thing into USB. Solved. Like that problem is solved. On the camera stuff, this is a Sony camera that I got on Craigslist. I think I can switch to this camera. This is a Logitech Brio.
Mm.
Okay. But again, it's all about lighting. Like this would be a crappy camera if it had bad lighting. Like you got to throw light at your cameras. This camera here looks wonderful, but even just doing that, turning off the LED, it's just not nice anymore, right? You can also change the color. That's a blue or a white, and that's an orange. So color correction is a useful thing as well. This can all be done for like 40 or 50 bucks, 40 or 50 bucks, and you can build up. You don't need to go and drop $500 on stuff. Does that make sense?
That's amazing.
It cannot be overstated how light is the key. I've
Mm-hmm.
also got lights here and here. You can see underneath my hands.
Mm-hmm.
To fill thing. They're just here, let me switch the camera again. This is like a little LED light.
Oh,
See?
it's so small.
Yeah, it's just a little cheapo. Again, it's just a little cheap crap. Like it doesn't need everyone's. I mean, I think the problem is you see the kids with their blinged out bedrooms and they take $1,000 worth of crap. It's just not necessary. It's just not necessary.
Mm-hmm.
I was here. I'm going to tell you a little secret. You're going to love this. Actually.
Okay.
Before I bought an Elgato, you know what this is? This is literally a light I got from Home Depot for $6, and then I
Wow.
put a CFL inside, and that's what I
Nice.
used to use for fill light.
Nice.
Doesn't have to be a
$6.
thing.
Wow,
Doesn't have to
that's
be.
great.
And see, and it's got a thing here.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to. I just want to call out. Now Asia says these lights are hot, like hot, or like those are hot. Like I don't know if that one's. If it's hot, like it's hot, or like, but yeah, I've got 2 of these Home Depot lights. I just want to point out, like, it cannot be overstated that you're throwing money away
Mm-hmm.
when it's just about, it could be as simple as moving if you have great like outside lighting, it could be just moving your space and using that outside light. Now here we go. Here's a contrarian argument. Buy real lights, they're worth it. That's valid, Eric, but not everyone's got that kind of scratch, right? So I didn't, and it worked just fine.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But this is just a ring light. It's an LED.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I agree. Yeah, these are a little hot, but then this is before LEDs came out.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not a reason not to do them, because if it's $6, it's $6.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Okay, so let's get into some of these individual content streams, and let's talk a little bit more about money. So TikTok. So you have, I think when my last check was about 179,000 followers on TikTok. You had a couple of viral videos that had over 2 million views, which was very cool that I watched them, and they were. I mean, I saw why they went viral. They were very good, and they were very fun to watch. How much money does your TikTok activity actually translate to?
Let me see if I can show you.
Okay.
I'm going to try to share my screen here, but give me a second before you bring my screen up. All right, let's try to do this. So, Elia, bring up the screen, please. Okay. So this is my my TikTok. So what I'm doing here is I'm using a tool called. I'm sorry that it's blown out. It's an HDR monitor, and this is a bug in the monitor. So this is my phone, and we're using Air Server, and I'm on a Windows machine, and I shared my screen over to here.
Very cool. Yeah.
Okay, so we can go to TikTok, balance. So it says current rewards, $0. Let's go down to TikTok Studio. TikTok is such an obscure, weird thing. Okay, here we go. Estimated rewards, analytics. There we go. So here's the last 2 months.
Nice. Yeah.
Okay, so you can clearly see the viral video on
Doing its thing.
on the first day
Yeah.
there, right? You can see this viral video right here.
Mm-hmm.
And then the same video going viral again.
Oh, that happens? I didn't
Yeah,
know it was a thing.
100% happens. It just
Huh.
pops up. It just happens again. And you can go into the analytics and you can learn about like why it went live.
Mm-hmm.
Did it show, was it reshared? Did it show up on Reddit? Like I think this second one, this time it showed up on the front page of Reddit.
Mm-hmm.
The first one was just FYP for your For You page.
Yeah.
Now, the creator rewards program is notoriously obscure and stupid. You don't get credit for videos under 1 minute.
Oh, wow.
So you always want your videos to be longer than a minute long. Little
Okay.
short videos don't happen. So I actually rambled on purpose on that video to get it over a minute. Okay.
Nice.
And then you can go into the advanced analytics, and then you can go back over the last 30 days. You can see the last viral video. You can see the last payout. And then you can scroll down, and then look where it says disqualified.
Oh, interesting.
They actually call out which videos are qualified and which ones are not. And the part that sucks is a qualified view has to be a certain length. So like this video here on diabetes made me 85 cents. It had 11, 1.5K or 1,500 qualified views. So here's my dumb phone video. Just short of 1 million qualified views. And it's 1:22.
Right.
And it says 1 million qualified views. But look at this is why TikTok sucks.
What?
Ineligible views. So almost over 500,000 people didn't watch it long enough.
Oh, I see.
Or visibly disliked the video. And this is the stupidest part. You ready for this? You build an entire audience of 200,000 followers, and they don't watch the video from the For You feed.
Wow.
So they watch it because they like you, not because they're a stranger.
Right.
That doesn't count.
Those
are ineligible. So building a massive audience on TikTok doesn't get you qualified views. Only, and also you can't repeat the views, like people watching them multiple times, which is creepy. So they have to be total strangers who found it on the algorithm page and watched it for a reasonable amount of time. So then Asia says, how does you get into the For You page? It's freaking roulette. TikTok is not a way to make money, period, full stop. It cannot be overstated. The only way to make money is to become like a massive, massive follower like Yuval or Grace Africa or somebody with 1 million viewers who's doing 1 million plus every single time. But in my opinion, and I think Hank Green would agree, that TikTok can get people to your YouTube. So use TikTok as a place to drive folks to your YouTube where the real money is.
So is that the pipeline, the strategy, I guess? You TikTok as your distribution channel because you can show up on people's For You page, but really you're directing people back to your YouTube channel, and that's where home is? Okay.
That's where home is, in my opinion. Okay. The reason that I do TikToks is because they're easy and they're fun and they require minimal effort, and it's got a decent, in camera editor. But it's absolutely obnoxious to go through high quality videos and find disqualified.
Yeah, that's frustrating.
Look, duets and stitches
are
not qualified. So super easy to get massive number of views, but if you stitch with somebody, it doesn't count.
Wow. Huh.
Yeah.
All right.
So Asia's asking, how do you convert? Yes, link in bio. So then this gets to the larger, like, how far do you go with these things, and what's the strategy? I think the strategy is be a person that's recognizable everywhere.
Mm.
It's not about trying to put all of the money in TikTok or all the money in YouTube. It's do like what Cassidy does. She's great on Twitter. She's great on YouTube. She has a newsletter, but I'm going to follow her a little bit everywhere because like, oh, I know her. This is the whole theory of 1,000 true fans. I think you and I
Mm-hmm.
have talked about before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The theory of 1,000 true fans is how indie bands, small bands, make money.
Mm.
If you want to turn this into a business, how do you get $100 from 1,000 people?
Mm-hmm.
You need 1,000 true fans. They'll
Mm-hmm.
buy your merch. They'll buy your T-shirts. They'll follow you everywhere. Or it's $50 from 2,000 fans. And that's
Mm-hmm.
a very reasonable number because there's 8 billion people on the planet and you only need 1,000 of them to care about what you're doing.
Right, right. It's not impossible for sure.
It's
That's a
not
doable
impossible.
number.
It's like, oh,
Might
okay,
take a little bit of time, but you'll
I
make
can
it.
get 1,000 people to care.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That seems it's more kind of emotionally possible.
Yeah.
And it's not so scary and overwhelming to say, yeah, I got to find 1,000 people that care about what I'm doing.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into YouTube. You mentioned YouTube, so let's dig into that. I know you've been on YouTube for quite some time, right? I think the earlier videos I saw were like
Oh gosh,
16,
yeah,
17
14,
years.
15 years
Yeah, something
since it
like
started.
that.
Yeah, definitely.
177,000 subs, 1.3 thousand videos. How does that translate into dollars?
So I want to call out, and you can go ahead and actually let me. I'm noticing that I'm using HDR. There's a thing called high dynamic range. I got
Mm-hmm.
these new monitors, and they are high dynamic range monitors, and it appears that they don't share well because it looks blown out. So let me turn that
Mm.
off real quick. Hopefully, I'm not going to disconnect our chat.
Okay.
1 second. I'm turning high dynamic range off on that monitor, and then I'm going to reshare it. There's a video right there, by the way. Like I just
Yeah,
realized it,
there
like
you
that's
go.
a whole thing. So go ahead and
Yeah.
bring that up for us. There you go. So I want to call out that I don't work hard on it.
Mm.
And there's a fella named Dave Butler, Dave's Garage, who retired from Microsoft, and he is really working hard.
Mm-hmm.
He is retired, and this is like his full-time job. He's got almost 1 million subscribers. I've watched him go from 200,000 to 1 million, and
Mm.
I want to just call out his content because nice, clean thumbnails, consistent 1 million+ views,
Wow.
big fonts. You know, he's obviously paying someone to put together some very nice thumbnails.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like clarity and consistency. And he's all about the LED lights.
Mm.
I aspire to do something like that.
Mm.
I did for a while pay someone to do that, but it's just not clean. I have a very sloppy YouTube, so I want to call that out to be clear.
Mm.
Okay. So how does 170,000 subscribers translate? Let's go to YouTube Studio. So I haven't done any videos in a while, so I've gone up 200+ in the last month.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like in the last month of doing nothing, I've made $200.
That's not bad for nothing.
That's walking around money. That's Amazon money. Yep.
That's go out to eat at a nice restaurant money.
Yep. It's definitely Chipotle money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do I? Oh, one thing I am very upset about YouTube that they changed recently is that Google Podcasts went away. So they forced me to move my podcasts to YouTube, and my
Mm.
podcasts are now littering my YouTube. So if you
Mm.
subscribe to my YouTube, you're going to get my podcast, which is
Mm.
fine, but I don't think it's a friendly place for audio content.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go there, you can see like here's a video, here's audio. Like so you're getting consistent stuff for me, and I'm getting a couple thousand views
Mm.
for each of them. But
Mm-hmm.
then it's unfortunately drowning out the stuff I want people to see, which are
Mm-hmm.
the popular videos. So like the
Mm-hmm.
podcast, I would like to be able to say, filter out the podcast on the
Right.
homepage.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So channel analytics.
Damien asks, why is monetization off?
Ah, for which one?
I don't know, but I assume he saw it somewhere.
Oh, some of these have monetization off because they're either too short or you can't turn monetization on if you are doing an ad.
Mm,
Um, it just depends on the video. Sometimes I turn it off manually because it's part of my job. So like monetization is off on this one because that's kind of my job.
mm,
So yeah, I turn it on and off based on whether or not I feel that it's appropriate because I don't
mm-hmm.
want to like be pounding on people because I'm not, again, it's not a profit center. Earn, here we go. They have all these different features you can do like memberships and stuff like that. I don't do any of that. Here we go. So there's 200 bucks. Let's look at the last 90 days. There you go. So here's a video that popped.
Mm,
So it looks like in the last 90 days across 200,000 views, 700 bucks.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's not too bad.
Got you. How did this look during the months, years when you were really trying? Because right now you're kind of, you're not putting in everything into the YouTube channel. You're not making as many videos as you used to. When you
Yeah,
hired
yeah.
that person and you were doing all that, what did that look like?
Yeah, so you can see here bumps of where I'm doing work. So like
Mm,
that's this number here
mm-hmm.
is the number of videos published.
Oh, okay. So I see that little stream
Yeah.
there. Yeah,
So
you
like
got that
look,
thing in play.
here's
Yeah.
here's 3 videos published.
Mm-hmm.
So what that tells you is if you consistently put videos out, they will watch them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm using a tool here called Zoom It. That's how I'm drawing on the screen.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So here you can see just a little bit at a time, just 2 a week. Notice this steady state line right here. Okay. And then notice this steady state time is almost double the height.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
By simply doing 2 videos a week, forgetting about the bumps, I'm doubling my viewership.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I think people need to be more realistic. Like it's not about million hits.
Mm-hmm.
It's about a couple of thousand people. If you get a
Mm-hmm.
couple of thousand views, you're doing okay. Right? So I'm
Yep.
thrilled if
Yep.
I get a day like this, like a 14,000 person day.
Mm.
So this was 4 grand over a year, which is
Mm-hmm.
fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes
Right?
a
I feel
difference.
very positive about that. So
Mm-hmm.
2023, 3 grand. 2024, 2 grand. So the trick would be if I could get a grand here and a grand there, that starts adding up to like, buy a car money.
So what's like the lifetime that you've made on YouTube?
55 grand.
Nice. That's like a salary. That's like a year's salary.
Well, but I think that's a salary that goes back into 2007,
That's true.
2006.
That's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So what if you're starting a YouTube channel today, knowing all that you've learned, where you had periods where you were really going hardcore, periods where you kind of backed off a little bit? How should we kind of approach a YouTube strategy if we're starting from scratch?
I think the thing that I am not doing well is what I do well, what I do well on my podcast, which I think we should talk about as well, which is
Agreed. Yeah.
consistency.
Yeah.
My podcast is consistent. I have put a show out every Thursday for the last 19 years without missing a day. That I do well
Mm-hmm.
because it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen so many video creators burn out.
Mm.
It's the editing.
That's a lot. Yeah.
I just it's so much editing, and watching them suffer in their editing is a challenge. The problem is the only way that you make editing go away is by hiring someone, and hiring
Mm-hmm.
a good editor costs money. So for me, podcast editing is slightly less uh, expensive, right? It's less labor intensive. So I can hire a content editor like Mandy Moore, who is my podcast producer. I pay her and she edits and produces the show. So then it makes the flow less weighty.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All I have to do is put out a good show. I have to do the fun part, which is read the book, talk to the person, have a great conversation. I
Mm-hmm.
put the raw files in a Dropbox, and then a couple weeks later, MP3s pop out the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I have another show called Azure Friday that is a video show. And Azure Friday, go ahead and bring up my screen here. Azure Friday is great, but again, I have an editor. I've done 750 episodes of Azure Friday
Wow.
over the last 14 years. And this is done in the same tool that you're using right now, which is StreamYard.
Mm-hmm.
So here's me doing my thing, and you can see it's distinctly StreamYardy.
Right.
StreamYard is a great, great tool for avoiding editing. So I do virtually all of this without any editing, and then we do pull-ups. And Rob Karen is my editor, and he'll pull pieces out. But I think it just looks very professional. It looks very crisp. Everyone's looking sharp. We also do a lot of pre-work, setting up their lighting and their framing cleanly. Made us look really crisp and clean on screen. Having nice branding. It's just about being intentional.
Mm-hmm.
There's no money here. There's just effort.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
StreamYard for this kind of stuff and avoiding editing, but there's still some editing going on back in the back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, and
So
people, sorry,
yeah.
one other thing. People are talking about video editing.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, oh, Adobe, blah, 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 DaVinci Resolve. You guys want to know what I'm really editing in? I'm
What?
editing in Clipchamp.
What
It's
is that?
it's just the stupid thing that comes with the Windows.
Oh, okay.
Everyone's all like, blah, 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 use like DaVinci Resolve. Dude, people make feature films. Like people make like legit movies. I just do it in Clipchamp. It comes with Windows.
Nice.
Like it doesn't matter. You see what I'm saying? Like, look,
Yeah. Yeah.
here's a video that I'm editing. Oh yeah, actually the videos are probably missing. Let me see if I have another one. I'm trying to show you a video that I would have done and edited. The point I'm making is that I love that people are passionate about their I love that people are passionate about their editing tools, but that is even those things are putting um, pressure on someone to go
Mm.
and buy a thing. Like you don't have to buy the thing.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like I know that I'm maybe over pivoting on the like, hey, it doesn't have to be that expensive, but I don't want people to feel like they have to go and get a subscription to a thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here's the video, right? 99% of your editing is going to be picking a spot, clipping it,
Yeah.
going to another spot, clipping it,
Yeah.
clicking, hitting delete, and then squishing it over.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me
Yeah.
that that's not
That's
99% of
all
what
of
you
it.
do,
That's the
right?
whole thing. That's the whole
So
thing.
you do not need to buy a subscription to Adobe anything.
Yeah.
God bless you guys and gals. It's just not necessary.
Yeah.
So Clipchamp, it's fine. Like that should be the title of. Look at
Clip
that.
champ,
We
it's fine.
Clipchamp, it's fine. We noticed a visual gap in your video. These appear as blank frames. Fix it.
Oh,
Delete all visual gaps. Done.
nice. Wow.
And I can do 4K. You know what I mean? Like it just doesn't
Yeah.
need to be as complicated as people choose to make it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
all of my videos are done in a tool called OBS.
Mm-hmm.
So here's me right now. Okay.
Nice.
And when I was showing, like if I switch and show my desktop, or I do different, these are all just different scenes, all free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just easy. And then by doing that, I don't have to do as much editing. So I just wanted to call
Mm-hmm.
that out. Sorry to
Mm-hmm.
go off on a thing.
No, no, all good, all good. So before we wrap up, I definitely want to get into more podcast stuff because it feels like you've done a lot of things. You've done video, you've done TikTok, YouTube, you've done speaking, although that's more of the job thing. But podcasting feels like the most consistent, hardcore thing that you've probably done of the different types of content you've created over the last couple of decades, if that's fair to say. Let's talk about money behind podcasts. What does that look like for you?
So I have, let me see if I can bring up a spreadsheet. I have a sponsorship spreadsheet. go ahead and bring up my screen. So I just have a Google spreadsheet where we have like when the materials are due from the sponsor, whether it's a pre-roll or a mid-roll. So the pre-roll is the before the show starts, let's let you
Mm-hmm.
know that this episode is sponsored by so-and-so. I also do a lot of ad swaps. So if I have an open slot, I've done this with your podcast before,
Mm-hmm.
where
Mm-hmm.
we'll trade ads. That's a great way to get started with podcasting where you don't have an advertiser yet.
Mm-hmm.
Call another podcaster and do an ad for them, and they'll do an ad for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that can kind of like be a cool way to fill those slots.
Get things started. Yeah.
Yeah, get things started. And you can see that there's gaps. I'd like more people um, to do advertisement. This was last year. It was nice and clean, and I had lots of them. So that I would say podcast advertising has kind of become a race to the bottom right now.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
if you can get a couple $100, that will allow you to pay your editor and um, uh, pay for your hosting. I use
Yeah.
Simplecast
Mm-hmm.
to host it, and then I use Zencaster to record them. And I'm considering moving away from Simplecast and moving over to Zencaster to just
To
host
host.
because Zencaster has AI tools.
Mm-hmm.
So Zencaster is really cool. I do all the recording in Zencaster. So these are all some of the recordings. I can go in and like set up all my episodes and then send them off to destinations.
Oh, very cool.
So
Wow.
it'll go and it'll send them to these locations for you. And then
Nice.
the best part is they've got this dynamic insertion feature that I
Mm-hmm.
haven't turned on yet, where they'll dynamically put ads in.
Mm-hmm.
That's a goal. But then clips, I think, is the coolest part. You can go in and say, let me see if I can. Have I? Oh, they've changed their UI. Basically, clips are an AI feature to say, go look at this show, find the parts that you thought were interesting, and then turn them into those vertical video talking
Mm.
head bits. And then
Nice.
you can get a conversation with a person. And I've done some of those with as an experiment with this lady Ginny Clark. Ginny Clark is great. She's on you've probably seen her before
Mm-hmm.
on Instagram. So I did this with her where she would say something perfect and pithy. So
Mm-hmm.
then I would turn it into a vertical video. In the
Mm-hmm.
past, I'd have to do all of that work manually. With
Mm-hmm.
Zencaster, those clips can be created directly from the episodes. You could go in,
Nice.
find an episode, and then generate a clip from it, and then make a little thing, and then put that on social.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
would probably put more work into that. And then
Mm-hmm.
Cassidy's asking, do I book those myself? I do. I do book them myself.
Mm.
I would say 70% of my podcasts are me going out and seeing someone doing something, and 20 to 30% are people uh, emailing me, hey, my so and so should be on your show. Like this
Mm.
person I know, or like it'll be a PR person.
Mm-hmm.
But I only
Yeah, I
do
get
it
a lot of
if
those.
they've written a cool book or something.
Yeah, yeah. So to get to those, you said, a couple $100 per show is kind of what you would target. How well does your podcast need to do to get to that level?
My guess would be 10,000 listens.
Mm.
If you can get 10,000 people to show up every week, that's a pretty decent sized show. If you're a niche, if you get 1,000 or a couple thousand,
Mm-hmm.
the trick is it's not about, you don't want to be able, this is like the difference between like audible.com, which would be very generic. Like Audible would then sponsor your show. They're not going to
Mm-hmm.
sponsor my show. I
Mm-hmm.
don't get 1 million listens a week.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Audible or like some open-ended populist thing like I don't know, dish detergent.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to have a detergent ad. But what I do have is thousands of developers. So
Mm-hmm.
my advertising is developer tools, right? So these are some of the people who advertise on my show, right? The only one that was not a developer was this guy, which is like
I think I just bought those products, by the way.
did you really buy Laird
I
Superfood?
think,
Isn't that
I
funny?
think I did.
Yeah, he's got like, it's like, clean energy kind of a
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, I
But
think I
the
bought
point is
a
that's
few.
all of these are programmer things.
Right.
So the point is, don't feel bad. Like if you have a niche, If you're a mommy blogger and you can guarantee 10,000 mommies, that's great, because that means it's not a bunch of randos, right? If your content is political and it's a certain demographic, you are self-selecting, which makes it easier for the advertiser. You want that. You want to make it easier for the advertiser.
Yeah. So we spent a lot of time talking about money, talking about different platforms, different content strategies. A big thing that I want to make sure we touch on is distribution, because it's one thing to create a beautiful TikTok video or to create a great YouTube video or to make the right tweet, but it's a whole other thing to actually get it out there and market it and get those eyeballs, impressions, engagement from the thing that we created. And it feels like you, for decades, have still managed to be relevant, still managed to create stuff that gets to people. What advice do you have for people who feel like they're creating quality stuff but want some help in the actual reaching of the masses of the people?
Yeah, I think the part that is easy to say now that I've done it, but is hard to hear if you haven't done it, and I think you would probably agree because you've done podcasts before, is you have to be prepared to talk to yourself for 100 episodes.
Mm.
It sucks. Nobody listened for 100 episodes. I mean, tell me I'm wrong, right?
No, you're right. Yeah.
But it sucks though. Like, oh, it's easy for you to say, Hanselman. People listen to your show. I mean, no one's going to show, unless you're already known, no one's going to show up on day one. So you got to grind it out. You know, Terry Gross from Fresh Air on NPR, she just had to grind out a couple 100 episodes. And then you re-release them, you know, from the archives later on. But also resetting your expectations about what good numbers are. Like for the first couple of episodes, if you get 10 or 50 listens, you should be excited about that. That's great numbers. But you also you're not going to start a podcast and have it be awesome on the first try. So if you listen to some of those early episodes, they kind of suck. I talked too much. I did an analysis and it was like I was talking like 50, 60% of the time. Now, if you look at my show, I'm talking like 10% of the time. And that's learned muscle. So yeah, I would probably say grind it out. And then again, put it everywhere. Just put it absolutely everywhere. Make reusable artifacts that can be shared everywhere.
Yeah. When I was doing Not a Designer, I took a break from it. I'm considering reviving it. But when I was doing it, I didn't get too far. I think in 6 months, I got to about 2,500 subscribers. But I was very surprised because I was actively working to get more subscribers. Like I was trying to, I was posting it everywhere. I was doing referral programs. I'm not sure if I did ads, but I was trying to figure out like, how do I actively grow this? And the only times I got a significant bump in subscriber growth was when someone else talked about it. It was like a tweet that you did, a tweet that Julia Evans did, a tweet that some other person with some type of decent following did. Like it really did come from word of mouth. And that is something I can't control, right? Like that really, there's nothing I can't really do much about that. I'm hoping that people like it enough. And it felt like the only good thing that I could do that was within my control was just doing a really good job and trying to create really quality content. And that's annoying. But
it is annoying. I would say though that I don't know if it's like if it's gendered or if it's demographic, but it's okay to ask. Like I would just say at the end, if I have an occasional famous person or low key famous person, and they go, "Oh, well, I really enjoyed this show." That's your moment. I'm glad you had a great time on the show. If I could impose upon you, I would love it if you would share it across your socials. That's all you got to do. You have to ask for it. You know how they always say, ask for the job? At the end of the interview, ask for the job. When you interview for a job, ask for it. I think that like, and again, I hope I'm not like taking this in the wrong direction, but like, I think that like men, old white guys are happy to go and say, well, yeah, you should share this. Please share this. Force yourself to say, if you enjoyed this as much as I did, I would love it if you would share it on your socials. And I have had famous people, low-key famous people, share the stuff, and I don't think they would have on their own if I hadn't simply asked for it.
Mm.
And I think there's value in that. I'm curious what the folks on the chat think. I think I was kind of like told by my dad, you have like, you can ask for stuff that you want.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that applies to everyone, but I think not everyone's wired that way or socialized that way.
Right, right.
So I want people to know it's not weird. It's
Yeah,
not bad to
yeah.
say, would you please share this?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, and for our final question, if you are starting your content strategy today, if you have big ideas, big plans on things you want to create for the world, and specifically with the focus of trying to turn that into cash, into money, where would you start today?
I think the easiest, most fun way, if you have access to people, is let me back up. Learning in public.
Mm.
That's work for me. It's challenging, but learning in public is just the perfect thing, because if you look at my podcast, what it is a bunch of people that I don't have any right to talk to. If I had emailed any of these people and said, "Hey, can I pick your brain?" They would be like, "I don't know you. That's weird. Like, can I have coffee with you?" I mean, how many times do you get a LinkedIn or a random unsolicited email that, "Hey, Saran, I'm going to be, where you live. I don't know you." But if you said, "Hey, would you like to come on my podcast?" That's the same thing. It's just less
Mm-hmm.
threatening
Yep,
and there's a microphone.
yep,
So
yep.
all of these people, CTO of NASA, Angie Jones, all these people that I would not ordinarily be able to just hang out with, you invite them on your show.
Mm-hmm.
A podcast is a great way for you to learn in public. Now you have to read the book, you have to do the research, you have to set up the interview, you have to deliver a quality product. But now that I've started doing side-by-side video for a lot of my shows, not all of them, but I'll put them on YouTube. So one quality 30-minute episode, you get a transcript. That's text. You can use that. You get a side-by-side video. That's a YouTube. You
Mm-hmm.
get an MP3. That's a podcast. Each of those can be chopped up, put on a TikTok, put on a Twitter, turned
Mm-hmm.
into an audiogram. What we're doing right now,
Mm-hmm.
this is content. Hopefully it has value. Hopefully you're going to be able to chop this up
Yep, that's the idea.
and
Yeah.
turn it into little pithy moments of something
Mm-hmm.
that you can spread all over the place for as long as possible. So
Yeah.
I would start with a tool like StreamYard or Zencaster and do that. Use these tools that let you send it out to N number of places.
Mm-hmm.
Sally says, how much time do you spend preparing for your podcast? I had a person on a while back. Her name was Safia Noble. She wrote a book. And check this out. Go ahead and bring my screen up. So she wrote this book. She's a doctor. I was very intimidated because she's like a famous doctor and she's written this book on like algorithms and algorithmic bias. And I had read the book, highlighted it, put in like little flags and little like, the little colored flags and everything like that. And she's like done a million of these interviews and stuff like that. So I pull the book up and I have all my little colored flags and I go, okay, on page 47, you said, and she's like, you read the book? I'm like, well, yeah, of course. Like, of course I read the book. And she's like, no one reads the book. She
Wow.
had been conditioned to go on shows and people would just make shit up, just
Wow.
vibes. And I was like, oh, I had no idea that was an option. So how do I prepare for the podcast? You do the work. So, you spend an hour or two reading the book, consciously looking stuff up, maybe read some of the books that are in the footnotes. And the most like the biggest joy, the biggest like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened, is when the person you're interviewing goes, that is a really good question. No one's ever asked me that question before. And you're like, nailed
Yeah,
it.
nailed
Freaking
it.
awesome. Now I'm like, it's almost like you're being given permission to
Mm-hmm.
do a podcast again. You're just like, oh, I don't suck. So all of my like low
Mm-hmm.
self-esteem goes away
Yeah,
because someone said, that was awesome, you didn't suck.
yeah,
Does that make sense?
that makes a ton of sense.
So yes, do the work. The bar is in, Asia says, the bar is in hell. Yeah, you'd be
Of
surprised.
course.
Read the damn book.
Wonderful. Well, that is Scott Hanselman. Thank you so much for sharing your dollars, your process, the way you think about things. We truly appreciate it. And make sure to check Scott out. We'll send an email to everyone who RSVP'd with some kind of follow up material. And if you're interested in digging into more hands-on activities and more workshop style content from Scott, we have a workshop happening next Tuesday, same time. It's on August 6th, and we'll have a link to that as well. And if you're interested, make sure to use the promo code BCM early bird for $50 off if you are not a BCM member, and it is free for BCM members. And I will also say that 80% of profits for that is going to go to World Kitchen. So, really excited to use this as a fundraiser for that as well. Scott, thank you so much for all of your time, your knowledge, your insight, and for being so open and transparent. Thank you all so much. And thank you to everyone in the chat who hung out. And see you guys next time.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. And I hope folks do join us at the longer and more in-depth workshop. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely.